Behind every amazing flavor is an amazing human who has perfected their craft. Welcome to Flavors Unknown, a behind-the-scenes look at new flavors and the chefs, pastry chefs, and bartenders who create them, with your host, Emmanuel.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of the Flavors Unknown podcast. I am your host, Emmanuel Laroche, and I have been in the food industry for more than 20 years now, both in Europe and here in the US. And every other week, I interview trending chefs, pastry chefs, and bartenders to discover their secret behind the scenes and the new ingredients and flavors that they are experimenting with. If this is the first time that you are tuning in, last week's episode guest was Kim Alter from Nightbird in San Francisco. So if you haven't listened to it, please, subscribe to the podcast and you will have access to all the 26 previous episodes that we have already recorded. This episode is a very special one. It's the 1-year anniversary of the podcast. It's the episode number 27, and I cannot believe that I have already reached this milestone. The tables have turned for this episode as I am the one this time on the hot seat. And my friend Katie Schlientz, she's well known as Intoxicate Foodie on her Instagram account. She has as well a food blog about the food scene around Westchester in New York area. She kindly accepted to interview me. So thank you again, Kate. A special thank you as well to Sharon and Dylan for suggesting this idea for the 1-year anniversary episode. Another big thank you to all my 26 guests who kindly accepted my invitation and generously gave bits of their precious time to be on the show. And obviously, a huge thank you to all of you who are listening to the show every other week, because without you, there would be no Flavors Unknown podcast. So let's close this first season of Flavors Unknown with me sharing the behind the scene of this podcast. Here we go.
First of all, happy anniversary.
Thank you very much, Kate. I appreciate that.
Congratulations. It's a big endeavor.
Yes, it's exciting. Very exciting. I didn't think, a year ago that I will be, still working on the podcast today. So it's pretty exciting.
It is exciting. And I think it's really great because I think a lot of people, you're getting a lot of great feedback. I think a lot of people are tuning in.
Indeed.
I want to ask you, what made you pursue a career in food?
Oh, wow. That's a question for like almost an hour answer here. I think that everyone who knows me would say that it's obvious that I love food. I always loved food. I think it started when I was a kid with my mom. Obviously, so maybe to say that I'm obviously French, I think that you can tell from the little accents. People said I have an accent.
No, it's tiny.
Okay, thank you. And my parents were from the northeast part of France, so between like almost close to Germany. So the Lorraine, Alsace, area. And so I always remember my mom cooking. Let's say cooking for the families or friends, and when we have family events, was very important. I learned how to cook when I was very young. So I think I learned first how to make yogurt cake, and then maybe when I was 6 years old, and then I think I tried the quiche, Lorraine quiche, because my mom was from that area. So the real recipe when I was maybe 7 or 8. So I knew how to make quiche, from that age. And I always been, in the kitchen with her. So I was lucky to have parents that traveled for a vacation. So not too far at that time. So only with a car. We are talking about ancient history here. We're talking, we're talking about the 70s. So I was lucky to go either in where my dad is from and a little village in the northeast part of France. And I will always remember the smell every Sunday after church, going to a local bakery and boulangerie and have what they call like a Paté Lorrain, which is a really flaky crust pastry. And inside the filling is 3 different types of meats, including rabbit. And
I will, when I was a kid, dream of the time that we will go there on vacation just to go and buy this. So the food is always very, very important. When my parents went a lot to Switzerland when I was a kid, like the German side of Switzerland, and I tasted a lot of cheeses when I was, very young. So yeah, it's always been part of my education and the way I was raised. I think, so you're talking about like the professional part. So after my high school, I went into chemistry. So somehow it was maybe to better understand, like the chemistry behind food. I don't know. I had to validate, some of my university time and college and my MBA with an internship, and I discovered the world of flavors. And I think that year I spent all the summer bothering, annoying my friends and family, bringing samples back from the first company, I worked for, try to really understand the taste at the level of the molecules and combining flavors together. And I was lucky when I started, there was enough time, or maybe it's a different culture being French and here now you're living in the US, but it was not that fast. Like here now you are hiring people and you want them to be operational and send them to,
right.
How it works. But at that time, I was lucky that I could go from one department to another of the company. So I spent time with the flavorists. I spent time with food technologists, and I was always fascinated how they put together different molecules, to come up with the taste of strawberry, or, how you can layer like a cocktail because you had to make a specific recipe for the, for a customer project. So that always fascinated me. And of course, we had a lot of chefs, in the structure, as well. So nowadays that I am on the business side of this industry in marketing, it's about what are really exciting to me. It's the variety, facing the challenges that can come one day from a culinary industry or a snack company or a beverage company or a yogurt, company. And I think the other aspect that I love in this, let's say, function is the travels, meeting a lot of people. And I really always love engaging with, with people and creating like a network. So all of this has obviously food, in the background. And I spend a lot of time with chefs and pastry chefs and mixologists, because when you work in the food industry, you look up to them when it comes to inspiration and creativity.
That's true. I feel like they're the epicenter of all of that. It's so interesting. I love asking that question because I always feel like people go back to that first moment they stepped in the kitchen and the first thing that they made. So I loved seeing your face light up when you were talking about that. When did you decide, or why did you decide that you kind of wanted to transition into podcasting?
So I think, first of all, I listen to podcasts. I have a commute where I live compared to where I work. So, we are talking New Jersey, New York area. So there's a lot of traffic. And I would say that the minimum time in the car in the morning in the evening is 45 minutes, but it could be up to 1.5 hours. So I have a lot of time. So I listen to like radio, but after a while I wanted to listen to things where in fact I can really leverage the time and maybe learn some things. So podcasts was really the solutions. I have a good friend of mine. His name is Alan Hart, and he has a podcast about, about marketing. So it's called Marketing Today. So I listen to that. Yeah, I have to say that most of the podcasts that I listen are maybe like business related, to what I do. I have, other podcasts about like social media or social savvy or, something like this. Trying to learn always like, something new and really like the platform. I think it's great. There's a high level of engagement, with, especially when they have a guest, when they interview people, there's always rich content. And, when you are in marketing, you're always looking for very good content that you can share with an audience. And I think that's the reason why I like, podcasting. And at the end, it's relatively easy, to do.
Relatively.
I say relatively.
Relatively.
Let's say when I started, I thought it was very easy. Now that I dived into it, it is relatively easy.
And how did you get started? What was, kind of your first step that you took to start this podcast?
I think that's, the people that knows me again will say that I could be anal in a way that if I start something, or I will not start something unless I know that I can commit to it and I can deliver.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to jump and put my toe on the water and try it. I know you can listen to a lot of things like this. I didn't want to just plug a mic and start babbling. I really spent the time to make a lot of research, try to understand the best practices. I think that what really helped me, I attended a conference, which is a very good conference about podcasting called the Podcast Movement. There was enough, again, we are talking about content. There was enough content there that I could really summarize the best practices. And I said, okay, so if I want to do it, first I need to do that. Second, I need to have this and so on. And I have enough as well, little tips to make sure that, I could start and I can, continue for the long run. So,
well, I'm sure, when you first started and you're thinking about how this is going to kind of all come about, you have to come up with a really great name, right? So how did you come up with Flavors Unknown?
Yes. So I think there's two main reasons. The first one, it's because when I think people don't really know too much about flavors. And when you talk to chefs and you talk to pastry chefs and mixologists, this is what they play with. Maybe they won't say play, but they say experiment with every day. And what was interesting for me is to look at behind the scene and understand what are those new ingredients and flavors that they are experimenting with. So that's the one aspect was, the unknown part, which is interesting. I'm always want to discover new things. The other point of reference is obviously Anthony Bourdain. It was very important for me to pay homage, to him, because when I launched the podcast, it was unfortunately not too long after that, he passed away. And for me, he was really an important figure, in the culinary space and culinary scene, in the US. So it really shown like people new ways, looking at restaurants. And as well, watching his shows, it was about being introduced to new locations, new places when it comes to food that you may never thought about before. For me, it was new ways as well to thinking about street food. We had that show Part Unknown, and the unknown part of my name came from that because I wanted to, have an homage to Anthony Bourdain.
He's a great person to pay kind of respects to give kind of a little shout out to in your podcast name. And going back to talking about, you started talking about how the podcasts you listen to were a lot about marketing and obviously flavors, and you have this really great passion for wanting to learn more. What is the mission of the podcast? Who are you speaking to and what are you trying to accomplish with this?
Oh boy.
Yeah,
it's a
heavy
big
question.
Word.
It's a heavy question.
I'm like, gosh, maybe I should have thought about this one before.
We'll start with the easy one. Who are you trying to speak to?
The mission is really about creating a platform for chefs or pastry chefs and, mixologists or bartenders to share some of their passions or the things that they are doing behind the scene, how they approach, creativity. Because you go to a restaurant and then, you look at the menu and you see those exciting series of words that are describing, a dish and it's going to somehow connect with you, or one of those dishes are going to connect with you. And I'm always curious to say, what was the process, from the chef or from the mixologist, if it's a drink, to combine those ingredients, to think about what's the original idea? Was it the produce? Was it the memory? Was it travel? Talking about the audience. So I think there's multiple audiences, but one are the other chefs and other bartenders and other pastry chefs that are always curious to understand what the others are doing. So, like their creative process, who were their mentor? That's something as well. What did they learn from it? from them. How do they grow their business?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had the chance to have like different, I would say, level of chefs in, you know, on my podcast, and, you know, from people that have maybe one restaurant, but people that have 14 restaurants. So how do you expand your business? And I think like other chefs are very, very interested, you know, about this. The other aspect are people like me, I mean, foodies, and they're always curious about, oh, maybe I'm going to learn a tip, you know, that I'm going to apply, you know, in my own cooking and, you know, cooking in my kitchen. It is about as well discovering new locations, because it's about, you know, having like, oh, now there's a new restaurant that I have on my radar screen, and I have to try it next time I am in, I don't know, Chicago, New York, LA, and so on when I travel. And we talk a lot about cookbooks as well. So, I think foodies, you know, are interested about this. And I think the third, I would say, audience profile are the people that are in the food industry, and they are always looking for inspiration. As I said before, looking up to chefs and mixologists to find like new ideas and, you know, combining, you know, different tastes together and so on. So that's the mission, is really to offer this platform for the guests to be able to share and the audience to learn.
It makes it much more interactive, because even if I know you mentioned the menu before and how you're seeing this collection of words to describe a dish, even now with the interactivity with Instagram, and we're seeing all these chefs kind of throw ideas back and forth and be inspired by other chefs and what they're posting. This platform really allows them to kind of get the nitty gritty of how that all comes together, because you can look at a dish and see a description and maybe be inspired. But I think you're even more inspired when you actually hear the thought process behind it. So, you know, thinking about that and talking about, you know, process, what does your process look like when you're putting together an interview or a podcast?
I just mentioned it to you. I just plug the mic and I go on.
You just plug it in and you go. That's it.
Exactly.
We just start talking.
Exactly. Some people said that to me once, and you say, oh, but what's the big deal? I mean, you just like, you know, plug a mic and then you ask a question, and I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. There's a lot that goes into it. And now I understand, when I was listening to the people at the conference saying that if you are not passionate about the topic, you know, that you want to launch the podcast about, don't do it, because the time that you are thinking that you are going to put into, multiply it by 3. And this is true.
It's true.
I think I have a like really lousy life probably. And I spend a lot of hours in the evenings and on my weekends. So I have to say that, you know, I have a different life stage now, being a bit older, and the children, they do not need me the same way they needed me in the past. So I have a little more free time. Being separated as well help. You know, I have, a lot of time in front of me, I guess. So that's the reason why, you know, I could get into it. So, but there is, if you are thinking about the process, there is 7 steps, you know, in the process.
Okay.
Basically, first of all, you have to establish a connection with the person that you want to have as a guest, you know, on the podcast. Then you have to have an agreement, because having a connection is not enough, especially when you're talking to chefs, you know, that are hyper busy.
Yes.
And you know that story.
I know that story
and
very well.
And you need to make sure that you stay connected. You don't want to bother them. You don't want to annoy them. So you cannot be on their case like on, you know, daily basis. That's an interesting part. Then after that, when they agreed, then there is the whole research, because you cannot go into the interview like the one we are doing today without you spending time in advance to learn about who is this Emmanuel Laroche guy. So you do the same thing, you know, with the chef. You search with everything that exists. Sometimes you have to discuss with them first, and it is very useful because you have to put together, you know, a series of questions that I am sharing the main question with them, because I want them to make sure that they, you know, that they think about the content again, because we are talking about rich content. So it's important to share those questions. So questions is step number 4. Then after that, there is the recording aspect that I do most of the time remotely, you know, on the phone, or it could be as well face to face, like the one we are doing today, which is very nice.
That is nice to.
And then when this is done, there's another aspect of the podcasting, which is editing. I edit the podcasts Why? Because I just want to focus on the content and to have rich content. So I'm trying to have a podcast which is 35 to 45 minutes, because otherwise after that, I think that people lose sometimes the interest and the focus. And after editing, this is again another complete life that starts, which is the promotion.
Yes.
Because this is strange, but you are doing this for people, but the problem is like people don't know about it.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
So you want to put it out, but then you have to let them know that it exists. Mm-hmm. So social media is here, but when you start, no one is listening. The promotion aspect, is important. And, I think that for me, it's key if, the people that really like the podcasts, they can have a role as well, and they can help the hosts, to promote the podcasts. They can share it with the other foodie friends. They can share it with, sometime, like the network they have. And maybe they don't have that in mind. They listen to it, they enjoy it. But, if you do, spread the good news.
Yes. Well, I've learned in my, several years of doing this that not all chefs realize that it's a great promotional tool. So you kind of have to coach them a little bit to help them understand that, well, this is how you can use this, and these are the assets that I'm providing to you. And, this is where it can live.
Absolutely. I've seen that some of the chefs are doing it very well. I have to say, like, from the guests, and I can name him because he has done a terrific job, at it. It is executive chef Andre Natera from the Fairmont Hotel in Austin. I think the episode that has the most download because of, the great work that he has done of promoting it. So thank you, chef. If you're listening to it, thank you. Another chef that recently did a very good job is Chef Jose Garces with his team. So again, great promotion, on their end. And some other chefs that's not part of their world. And,
right.
So I'm trying to help them. I prepare always, all the links, and I prepare visuals that I share with them the day when the podcast, their interviews, is aired. And then, if they want to promote, then they have the tools to do it. But I was thinking as well, like the other people, like the foodies, that are listening to it and, that subscribe to it. It's easy for them, to share it. And sometimes they don't really think about it. But if as I said, other friends, your friends that, love food, then please, share. Share it.
Flavors
share it. Share it. Did I say share it?
Now, every interview that you do includes these rapid fire questions, which I love. We're not going to do them yet. We have rapid questions for you. We're going to put you in the hot seat. Gosh. But it's very interesting to me that you incorporate this into your podcast every time. So I want to know why the rapid fire questions. And the chefs don't get these in advance. Those are
not at all. So that's exactly why. It's because, again, going back to, and, probably because of my marketing background, but it's all about trying to have rich content. So, and for me to have rich content, I don't want to, ask the question that they haven't seen before, like when it comes to the content, because they are going to answer the first things that come to their mind. And sometime later they would say, oh, I should have said that. So when it comes to the creative process, when it comes to their mentor, when it comes to the ingredients that they are experimenting with, all those questions, I share them not too long ago, not too long in advance. It could be like 3 days before the interview. But at least by looking at them, they have an idea of, what they want to say. But you want to keep the spontaneous, aspect of an interview. So, and it's always fun. I try to have a series of questions that they will never seen before, and they can answer, quickly if they want to, spend more time on it. But those ones, they never seen it. So there's kind of like a different rhythm, in the podcast because of that.
Do you feel like you get the best answers when you do the rapid fire?
Because of what the rapid fire questions are about, I think it's easier for them
to answer.
And I think it's a good answer because of what the topic of those, it's like around, if they said to me during the conversation, I have large collection, of cookbook. So it's easy for me to say at the end as a rapid fire question, oh, what is the most inspirational cookbook that, you have in your collection? So can you tell me like 3 cookbooks that are important to you and so on? So that's easy for them, to answer. Mm-hmm. But if I ask them, and as a rapid fire question, what is your creative process? That's much more difficult.
How do you decide who you're going to interview? Because I can imagine that you have a quite a long list of people that
they're all knocking on the door. They're all saying, I want to be on it.
We did have to put a sign, exactly. Keeping people out.
Exactly. The door is closed here at the moment. It's locked. Okay, good question. So first of all, what's important is that they have like a recognition. So they have been awarded one way or another. Maybe it's not like a James Beard award as a finalist, but maybe they are a semi-finalist, or, they have been selected by James Beard Foundation, or they have been awarded by Star Chef. That's, for me, it's interesting, because if those companies, selected them, that there's a reason. They are very professional, organizations. So they know, what they are doing. So that was very important. Then after that, for me, which is important, is that I have a interesting story to tell. There's something that they can talk about, which is a different topic. So think about, like, in the people that I've interviewed, Drew Adams, for instance, Chef Drew Adams from the Four Seasons in Washington, D.C., the Bourbon Steak restaurant, is passionate about foraging. I think it's outstanding topic. And we spent time, on the podcast, talking about this. And he has a program concept that he calls Foraging and Feasting, where in fact you can contact him and you can go foraging with him. And then after that, you can go to the Four Seasons and he's going to make a tasting menu based on the type of food that you have seen during the foraging, excursion. So I was lucky after.
I had a feeling that you were going to just slip that right in, that you got to do that. And I was just going to be totally envious.
I love him. So when I heard about it, after I turned like the stop recording button, so I said, so what's the best month to go foraging and feasting, with you? So I was lucky. This March, I went with my younger son. We went to Washington, D.C., and I spent the whole day almost with him. And so it was only the 2 of us with him, and we went foraging in the woods and along the Potomac River. Then after that, we went back into the kitchen, and he prepared for us, especially. He was the chef cooking for us the whole evening, and we stayed 4 hours. And I had an 18 courses tasting menu.
Listen, you don't have to rub it in. You don't have to rub it in. Yeah, no, next time I'm in.
Absolutely.
But I can.
So that's this idea of having a story to tell.
Right.
And then you have the other ones that are knocking on the door. We were talking about this, and I was very exciting to have like several chefs that reach out to me through Instagram. Did I mention that I have an Instagram?
What's your Instagram handle? Why don't we just throw that right in?
It's called @FlavorsUnknown.
Oh, all right.
So they direct message me, and one was Sam Friend from White Birch restaurant in New Jersey.
Okay.
He heard that I've interviewed another chef from New Jersey. There's a great chef in New Jersey. So Chef Aaron Ryan from Common Lot in Millburn.
Okay.
And so he listened to the interview and he said, "Hey, that's great. I really love it. And why don't you come over and have a discussion?" So that's the way of doing it. Same thing with Chef Andre Natera from the Fairmont. Reached out to me at the end of last year. So the podcast was very recent, and he said, how much he loved it, and that it would be great next time I'm in Austin to connect. That was very exciting to me because he's an executive chef from a hotel, which was completely different from what I had before.
Different perspective, of course.
Yes, exactly.
So it sounds like you're traveling a lot.
I love traveling.
Yeah, yes, I'm a little jealous. Maybe I should have expanded my area from just outside of Westchester and Fairfield counties.
Come on. You are very well known. You are everywhere. So don't be jealous.
I do want to ask you, because I know what my answers would be to these questions, but I'm curious to ask you what you find the hardest part of interviewing and the easiest part of interviewing. Because I think there's a lot of different things that we could cover here. There's a lot of different elements to the interview process. So what is the hardest part for you and what is the easiest part for you?
I think the hardest part starts before the interview. So for me, again, it's always the same rule that what comes out is based on what comes in. You have to do a lot of research. You have to prepare the interview. You need to make sure that you know what you're talking about, to make sure that you are referencing the right history of the chef and, you know, and all of that. And then you're asking questions that you know that they are topic that they are interested in. So the research part is the hardest. And the other part is during the interview, which you have to force yourself to make sure that they are in the light. So they are the guests. So they are the one talking. And not to interrupt them, not to, you know, have long intros and so on, because it's about them. They are the guests and they are the one that has to shine and they are the one that produce the content. So I think this is the important aspect and to keep the whole interview, you know, engaging. That story, you asked me the hardest. So
the easiest,
which I thought would be the hardest, I think at the beginning is the technology. Look at it today. Okay. We almost forgot like everything for the recording today. And then in 5 minutes, we put like everything together.
Yeah, it's like we jerry-rigged it.
So I remember that my first interview, as probably yours, I was stressed like hell. And the poor guy, I feel for him because I was focused on the technology because I said, if it's not recorded, what do? I have to call him again and we have to do it all over again. So my first guest, so I have to thank him because without him, I would not have had the podcast. So his name is Jesse Vida and he's probably still sweating after, you know, I remember like hanging up. He was like, what the heck happened? So he was the mixologist at Blacktail, which is a fantastic bar, you know, in like Battery Park area of Manhattan. Now the lucky guy moved to Singapore and he is at a fantastic bar called Atlas in Singapore. So Jesse, if you are listening now, I would love to interview you again. It would be like number 2, the return 1 year after. I promise you it will be much better.
Well, for me, I feel like the technology is the hardest part because you never know and it might just go down or a mic stops working or, you know, you lose the interview and that's always, you know, I've got my eye on the computer. I'm like, is it still on? Is it still on?
Now to make sure that it's still on.
Who's checking in? Working. It's still working. Okay. Most memorable interview. Do you have a moment that was just maybe, you know, really stands out for you?
This is like a tough one because people person. So I can find like a great rationale for all the interview that I've done and I have interviewed. So I like all of them. I have to say that I have to say thank you again for the 3 celebrity chefs that I had, you know, on the show. So Jose Garces that I call like a competitive mindset. Then I had Chef Edouard Lee, which I call like the Marco Polo of American cuisine. And then David Burke, who is really a creative mind. So thank you again for being, you know, a guest on my show. It's memorable because you always say and think that they are not going to appear, you know, when you do it remotely because they are so busy. Right. And say like, who am I? You know, so come in their universe. And then I was lucky that, Edouard Lee, I did it face to face as well, Jose Garces, but Edouard Lee invited me to, you know, his apartment complex to do like the recording. And that was a special moment. But they are all like interesting. Like, as I said before, Chef Andre Natera, was a very exciting time for me. He spent a lot of time before to show me like the whole kitchens, all the different concepts, the food concepts and in the hotel, you know, in Austin. I call him like the culinary Yoda. So he love about this is because when you spend time with him after an hour, you understand why he's considered like a mentor, you know, for like all the people that he has been working with. And he was very sincere. So for me, it was a special moment because he was really open to share some of the difficult time that he had as a chef, facing some maybe difficult critics, you know, when he had his own restaurant in the past. I will thank him forever because it was really a great experience. Sam Mason, Sam Mason.
I love Sam Mason.
I say it's a friend because we have been doing different things, at the professional level. But it's the ice cream wizard. So, it's every time that you want to try something new and different, this is where you go because his imagination has no limit.
It's true.
So another one that was very, I can go on and on.
You can go on,
Another
yeah.
one is Fiori Tedesco. So he's a chef from Austin, from Locadoro. This guy is very generous. And, I like to talk with him. He's a people person and I discovered the whole term of like sanctuary restaurants. It's very important interesting when I do the interviews is to see the states of the industry at the moment and the gap that exists between like the front of the house and the back of the house. And there's a lot so that industry has to change. Mm-hmm. And I think that, I'm not saying this is the solution, but the way how you hear or you listen to Chef Fiori Tedesco talking about it, it gives you hope. So I really love that. And, I just came back from Portland, so I was lucky to see again Chef Bonnie Morales from Kashka. And I love that story of her family from Belarus, not Russia, Belarus. But she really, for me, what was very interesting talking with her is the fact that to make sure that their employees understand what they are talking about, they have done in the past, and I think they will reprogram in the future. But like a trip with some of their employees to Belarus for them to experience how many chefs, do that. It's amazing. So there's a lot of, and I'm sorry, I forgot, probably a lot of them and I do not want because I love, I love them all.
Right. Knowing that I'm asking you this question and watching you talk about some of these chefs and the interesting stories they have to tell, I have a feeling I'm going to know some of the answer of this question. But what really inspires you outside of these chefs and you're lighting up when you're talking about them? What is inspiring to you?
Outside of the chefs?
Outside of the chefs. In the food industry.
Traveling, I try to go at least at one place that I do not know. Mm-hmm. I'm exciting because very soon in October, I'm going to go with my son in Japan for the first time.
I just feel like you're throwing these things out here now just to make me jealous. I just feel like you're just rubbing it in.
I always, try to do something. I went with my daughter to Morocco. Last year we went to Costa Rica. I always try to discover something new because it's inspired me not only about the food, but the culture, people. So the other source of inspiration comes from people. I try to listen to people, try to spend time with them, listen to what they have to say. Everyone has an interesting, experience. They have to be genuine though. I don't like people that pretend or have big egos. So it has to be very, very natural. You can learn a lot from, you learn every day from, people. So inspiration will come from people I meet, and not only in the food industry, it could be, any profile of individuals and traveling. So that inspires me.
I feel like I should have known that through your Instagram because I know that's the other thing that you post a lot about is all your travels.
Yeah, I know. And every time you say, you've been somewhere again.
So I'm like, tell me about Cuba.
Oh my gosh, Cuba was fantastic. I was lucky to go there where it was still easier, I would say, because unfortunately it's not that easy now that it was maybe 2 years ago that I went there. That was amazing. I met fantastic people, very humble, very generous people. And usually what I do, I stay on Airbnbs because I really want to meet, and to have a full immersion in the culture. So if I stay in a hotel, it's different. But, if you go to Airbnb, I had the chance to stay in Airbnb where the host was the former manager of whole the cigar factory in Cuba. And the poor guy, of course, now was retired. So that means he has nothing to live with. Yeah. Unfortunately, the way the system is there. But, he thought about opening an Airbnb, and it was interesting because my Spanish is very limited and his French was 0 and his English either. So we had great conversations.
I'm sure you did. All right. Are you ready for your rapid fire questions?
Oh, no. I think it's the end. Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, you got to get in the hot seat. You got to feel. You got to feel it. You got to feel like the how the chefs feel. All right, first one up. Your favorite flavor?
Oh, it's like what's my favorite kid?
Yeah.
I mean, I have 3 children. I love them all.
All right, give us top 3. Top 3.
That's what it is. But if you come to what is my favorite ice cream flavor, is the latest flavor that Sam Mason has created.
Oh, that was an easy out. Okay.
No. But favorite flavors. I love green tea, matcha green tea.
Okay.
I like honey.
Okay.
I like lavender.
Oh, all right. I feel like I'm starting to see a little bit of a trend here.
I like spicy. So everything which is spicy, I love. So I love ginger. I love chipotle, that type of thing. So a great taco with, some chipotle. It's cool.
All right.
But it's very difficult for me to answer because
you love them all.
Usually when I go to a restaurant, I will look for the unknown. So I will look for something that I never selected before.
Okay. You're going out to dinner. It's Friday night. What cuisine are you generally gravitating towards?
Sushi.
Okay. That's a good one.
I love sushi.
What's the one thing that you look for in a restaurant?
It will be definitely on the menu, studying the menu and looking at the creative aspects. I'm not a mainstream. I'm not, like, for instance, I have a hard time to go to a traditional French restaurant because for me it's déjà vu. Mm-hmm. And I said déjà vu. And he said déjà vu for me. And then it will, I'll say like it's boring. Sorry. But I always gravitate to dishes where I see the twists, or I like twist on classics. That is fine. Or I'm going to look for, there's a combination of taste that I never seen before. So I have to have this. But otherwise, now thinking about it, there is always 2 things that if it's on the menu, I will take.
Okay.
Scallops.
I love scallops.
And duck.
Oh, you and I are very similar in so many ways. Mm-hmm. Aside from the whole, I'm not French, but everything else, we're on the same.
It's too bad you're married and I'm married. That's not really, but okay.
And I've gone out with you enough to know that you love a great cocktail.
That's true.
So spirit of choice.
Spirit of choice. Can I rank? Yes. Okay, so Lily vodka out because I don't like vodka. It's like empty calories for me. There's no taste. Sorry. Bonnie Morales will kill me if she has.
I was going to say, there goes all your vodka sponsors.
So, okay, bye. Sorry, bye-bye. I love mezcal and I love tequila. Thanks to Chef Junior Marino, who introduced me to those several years back. I discovered a whole world that I didn't know. So, and otherwise, bourbon. I was always into whiskey when I was based in Europe. And I was traveling. I was always bringing a bottle of whiskey. But when I moved to the US 17 years ago, I decided that I should focus on local goodies. So I decided to discover the world of bourbon. Oh, yes, I discovered it because now I go to, I was in Portland and I went to the whiskey restaurant, whiskey bar, which is like very famous. I don't remember the name of it. When you look at the menu and then you look at it and you said at the end, there's only 3 that I do not know. I said, either I am an alcoholic or I am a foodie. So let's go for the foodie version.
Podcast you're listening to right now.
Mine? Yeah, no, sorry. I should not say that.
Flavors unknown.
Podcast that I'm listening to at the moment. So the one from my friend, like Marketing Today, I think it's a great podcast.
Okay, last one and then you're off the hook. Piece of advice you'd give someone who is interested in starting a podcast?
My first piece of advice is take a piece of paper. And if you have, based on the topic that you want to do, if you cannot stop writing ideas or guests, then you are into something. Because if you start forcing yourself to create content around that topic, because after 5 lines, you say, I'm not sure what's the 6th one. That's a wrong topic because what is important with podcasting is being regular and to have a frequency. So I'm doing it already every other week, which usually it's, every week on a weekly basis. I cannot do it because I do it on top of my, other job. So if you cannot produce content, forget. Then the other one is make sure that you're passionate, because it's going to consume much more time than you think it will. And after that, listen to podcasts and other podcasts, and listen to, make notes of things that you like, things that you don't like. Make notes of the things that you don't like and make you switch off the radio or your iPhone because it annoys you. So that's as well good practice. I think that's a lot of people are concerned about the technology. I think it's easy to find a good mic, find your recording, platform. I think focus on the content. I think that's the important part.
Well, I just want to let you know that I'm completely honored that I am interviewing you, kind of flipping the switch. I am. I know you're rolling your eyes at me, but they can't see it, but I'm going to say that you're doing it. But I am. I'm very honored that you selected me to kind of flip the switch and interview you for a change for your anniversary.
It was an idea from a good friend of ours. So,
yes,
so that was, a good idea. It's a terrific idea. So thank you so much, Kate. I really appreciate that you want to spend an end of the day with me.
Of course.
And doing this great interview. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, this is done. Wow, I think I'd rather have the chefs, on the hot seat instead of me. Thank you again, Kate, for interviewing me. I have to say it was fun and I had, a good time, and I'm glad we did it. So thank you again for all the chefs and the guests who appeared on Flavors Unknown on season 1. Thank you to all the listeners and the subscribers. I hope that you are all subscribers of Flavors Unknown. Please continue to listen to it, and please share it with all your friends and family, because word of mouth is the best way, to promote the podcast. I'll always love as well to receive feedback. So go to flavorsunknown.com and share your comments on the comment section, at the end of each of the episode show note page. Or you can go as well in the podcast survey, which is on the contact page. You can follow my Instagram post at Flavors Unknown. The next episode will be the beginning of the season 2 of Flavors Unknown. And I would like to give you the opportunity to ask questions to be featured on my interview with the guests. To do so, go to the contact page on flavorsunknown.com, and in the feedback comment section, enter in the subject line the name of the guest, and then in the message section, the question you would like me to ask. So here's 4 of the guests that I'm going to have in season 2. Very excited to have Chef Gabriel Kreuter, who is a 2 Michelin star in New York City. I am trying to convince Chef Brad Gilmore in Miami. He has a lot of restaurants there now. He has Alter, Amber, Kaido, Brava. And then Chef Andrew Whitcomb, who is at Floret, at the Sister City Hotel in New York City. And as well, the couple Laura and Sayat from Noosh in San Francisco. I see you in 2 weeks. And until then, remember that people who love to eat are always the best people.
Thanks for listening to Flavors Unknown. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave a review. Find the show notes at flavorsunknown.com. And if you want to join the Flavors Unknown community, search Flavors Unknown on Instagram and Twitter.